Hello, I'm Stuart from Inspiring City, and today I'm with Mark, who you might also know as the street artist ATM. Hi Mark.
Hi Stuart.
We thought we'd meet at the Walthamstow Wetlands because it's pretty apt actually for the sort of work, particularly that you do on the streets. And it's full of biodiversity here. It's just a brilliant place to come. And I think I first saw your bird murals. It must have been sort of 2014-ish, sort of around the South Acton estate.
That's right, yeah.
Somewhere around that.
That's the first ones I did.
That's the first ones that you actually did. What made you paint in the first place, though?
Well, I was volunteering with a local community arts group, and we set up a little gallery in Acton, and we also got the opportunity to paint on some walls on the South Acton estate. And that's the first one I did was a snipe. And when I was thinking about subjects, and that was the first big bird painting I did, it was because it was on Bollow Bridge Road, which, there was a bridge over a river, and the River Bollow, which is now under the tarmac. So I thought it's a nice way of, the snipe was a representation of what the landscape used to be like when it wasn't it was a village outside London, and it was little farmsteads and fields. And so it was a reminder of a process which is continuing now. It's still going on. Just a loss of green spaces and more building and urbanisation, roads and buildings.
I suppose that's been a running theme with your street paintings, isn't it? Because looking back to some extent either on a bird or a mammal that used to be there but wasn't, or drawing attention to something that might be once prevalent in that particular area but is no longer.
Exactly, yeah. It was a way of reaching street art's a fantastic way of reaching a big new audience, like people who wouldn't normally go to art galleries, which most people don't, and it's just presenting images of creatures that probably aren't in people's consciousness a lot of the time, especially in towns and cities. So it's a good way of communicating what could be, what we've lost, but also what could be.
And it starts a conversation, doesn't it? When people walk past these things, they think, "Oh, well, why is the snipe in there in South Acton?"
No, exactly, yeah.
Used to be all over, South Acton.
Yeah, well, it starts a conversation about what a snipe is, and then also why am I painting it? Yeah. And a lot of people obviously didn't know what a snipe was before, even though it's part of the language. The word sniper comes from snipe, from the difficulty of shooting a snipe, because they're game birds. They're still legally shot, but they're decreasing really very rapidly. So because their habitat is just disappearing. Modern farming and just it's changed. Everything's changing. Everything's becoming more industrialised and more mechanised, and so the little kind of pockets of unspoilt land, which a place like this is kind of bringing back, with these reed beds, planting reed beds, but they're disappearing from the larger countryside.
So one of the things I asked you to think about was the top 10, well, not the top 10, but 10 most impactful murals that came to mind, and and I just wanted to explore them with you a little bit. And we're going to sort of go through them in alphabetical order. And these are all, I think, are these all murals that are still there? Can people still see them? Or?
Yeah, they are.
Yeah, they're all still there.
Yeah.
So the first one is the badger, and the badger was painted for the Scottish Wildlife Trust in Lanark.
Yeah, that's right.
So what was it about the badger that made you want to paint that there?
Well, they actually asked me to paint the badger there because it's the Falls of Clyde, and it's a famous ancient badger set. Because badgers are amazing animals. They're big. Their sets and their roots and their feeding grounds and everything go back hundreds of years. That's why roads can be so devastating to badgers, because they still follow the same traditional historical tracks which they've done for centuries. But now, if they cross a main road, that's where they might all get killed. Right. And but anyway, there's a famous set on the Falls of Clyde, and it was to celebrate that. It was painted on the side of a substation, electricity substation, which Pebble Dash. It was brilliant. It was a difficult surface, but it was a brilliant big wall, and so that's why I was asked to paint that. But also, from my perspective, it was it's good to be able to talk about badgers from the point of, in the last few years, the badger cull and all the controversy around it and all the scientific evidence that says it's not effective in stopping bovine TB. It's very cruel and it's counterproductive. It increases the spread of badgers. They move around more, and it diverts attention from the real reasons for the spread of bovine TB. There's many, transporting cattle, which farmers do, transporting cattle around the country, and also getting rid of smaller fields, big fields where badgers always used to go along the hedgerow, traditionally go along hedgerows, and now they're going across big fields and just getting more in contact with the cattle, which means that the cattle are more likely to get TB, whereas in the past they wouldn't, because the cattle wouldn't be in the hedgerows.
So it's a land management sort of issue.
It's very complicated.
The badgers are being blamed.
They're being blamed. I mean, it's not to say that they don't carry bovine TB, because there's also a vaccination programme to vaccinate the badgers, which could be an alternative, but it's very complex, and I think it's very simplistic to think that culling badgers is going to solve the problem. But if there were no badgers in this country, I think the problem would still exist. Yeah.
Okay, so that's badgers, and that was the first mural. We've got 9 more, but the second one you chose was the chaffinch, and that was a mural on Loughborough Farm. Yeah. So tell me about the chaffinch and why it is that you painted this one.
Well, the Loughborough Farm was a brilliant example of what can be done, because it was just, again, in a very urban area. It was just a bit of tarmac, unused, just nothing living there, nothing growing there, and local activists basically took it over, and they started growing food and herbs and flowers in big builders bags, because the ground was so toxic, because they grow everything in builders bags, and now it's a beautiful little kind of community place where people can go volunteer, learn about gardening, harvest the produce, and a chaffinch. They asked me to do a painting on the hoardings outside, just to kind of give it, so that people knew what it was. And I chose a chaffinch because it's just the kind of bird that does live in urban areas, and they can survive in quite a small space. And a place like that is exactly what they need. And so it seemed a good symbol. And over the years, it's got graffiti. It's got graffitied a lot, and but the graffiti tags, they just go around the bird. Nobody's painted over the bird, and it's decayed. It's on plywood panels, so the whole painting is really decayed, and the paint is it's all cracked, and you can see the wood grain through it. But with the wood grain showing through and all the tags, it's got a real energy to it, which I really like. It's got a real rhythm, to it, so it's nice. On lots of levels, I really like it.
So the third one is the Cuttlefish, and the Cuttlefish I think you painted in Portsmouth.
That's right.
So it's a marine.
That was
theme.
For. Well, it was for the Wildlife Trust generally, but also for the Hampshire and Isle of Wight Wildlife Trust, because they had a big. It was 2 campaigns. It was like National Marine Week, and also a campaign called Living Seas, and because they were trying to save the Solent, which is that bit of sea. Mm-hmm. It's really important for a lot of marine life. The sea between the Isle of Wight and Portsmouth, where the seagrass grows, which is kind of an endangered environment, but it's acts as a protective area for the cuttlefish migrate there to lay their eggs, and the baby cuttlefish hatch there, but also lots of baby fish and seahorses and crabs, and also it's a proper beautiful environment that's hidden under the sea, but that sustains so much life. So it's really important, and it's the idea that there's all these things going on under the water that we don't know really anything about. So that was great, and it was that was a really good one, because it was on the main road on Museum Road next to Portsmouth Museum. So it's the main road to the Isle of Wight ferry. So a lot of people will see it. So it's so it's a good example of how street art can actually really make people think about those things.
Yeah, so it might not even thought, because you're absolutely right, you know, between in that particular channel, there's all sorts of stuff that goes on, but we just don't see it.
No, we don't see it.
And you're drawing attention to that really by
Yeah.
the cuttlefish.
Yeah.
So the fourth one is the hedgehog, and you went to Ipswich to paint the hedgehog, and I think there was something about Ipswich wanting to become a hedgehog-friendly town. Is that right?
Yeah, well, that was the Suffolk Wildlife Trust, and they had a hedgehog officer, Ali North, whose job it was to make Ipswich the most hedgehog-friendly town in the UK. And I think she's done a really good job, because it was all about. It's about you know, telling people, because a lot of the time people just don't know what is damaging to a particular species. In the case of hedgehogs, you know, a lot of modern fences, and walls around gardens just mean that hedgehogs literally starve to death. They travel a lot, you know, a few square kilometres in a night to find food, and they need to get from garden to garden, and they need, you know, like passageways and corridors, or, you know, like CD-sized holes in fences.
Is that why they're struggling, do you think?
It's one reason. I mean, the other reason is just, you know, the same reason why a lot of things are struggling, like over-tidiness of gardens, paving over of a lot of front gardens, you know. So cars, increasing roads, people need parking space. So it's just, you know, things like, little lawns, little old hedgerows, not just in the countryside but also in the city, are disappearing. And, you know, like less and less undisturbed places, like piles of logs or piles of dead leaves. They're not often left over the winter. People, you know, parks clean things up. Everything's tidied up, but they need that to hibernate in, you know, and they find their food in there. You know, lots of other birds and animals as well. So it's it's a kind of universal problem. Too much tidiness and and not enough little refuges.
And that's where they need to burrow to hibernate.
Well, they don't burrow, but they need piles of logs. You know, they need a safe, dry place.
Yeah.
They need dry leaves. You know, but they need those things to be there and undisturbed all year. And like bonfires are another big problem, because you know, when people put a pile of logs, you know, the hedgehog will go in there to hibernate and then die in the bonfire.
Right. Oh.
Yeah.
Goodness, right.
That's why people should always check bonfires, but, you know, the base of bonfires before they light
horrific
them.
thought, isn't it? It might be little hedgehogs under there. So number 5 on the list is the Hen Harrier, and the Hen Harrier was painted on the Isle of Sheppey. Beautiful. This picture's lovely. It's just, is it an old pillbox or something that you painted it on?
Yeah, I mean, it was Ben Oakley who knew about that wall. He's got a house in Shellness, which is a beautiful little village there, and I mean, that's kind of a perfect site for a piece of street art, because And when I was painting it, you know, just surrounded by the sea and the calls of birds, and it's just on its own. It's just standing there on its own. So and you know, the boats sailing past, you can see it from the water as you sail past. And hen harriers migrate over that spot, you know, when they're going up north, and that was for part of our campaign to try and help protect hen harriers, because they're shot a lot on grouse moors in the north of England, you know, because they predate young grouse. Yeah. So there's a big ongoing struggle between the grouse hunters and the conservationists about that. And
are they still being shot up there?
Yeah, I mean, they're illegal. It's totally illegal. I mean, they say they're not, you know. I mean, but they're you know, hen harriers disappear and they're not there where they would be. And there's a Hen Harrier Day each year, you know, hashtag Hen Harrier Day, which kind of tries to draw attention to it and trying to change the law to stop driven grouse shooting. But yeah, it's
still happening. And on the pillbox in the Isle of Sheppey, do they just pass over, or do they actually stop for a bit in that area?
Yeah, because there's reed beds around there. Yeah, and I don't know, to be honest, about how much time they spend there. But there's marsh harriers there as well in that area.
So number 6 is it's a double mural. We've got the heron and the common tern. And where was this? This is at Greenwich Ecology Park.
Yeah, Greenwich Peninsula Ecology Park. Yeah, that's a really special place. I mean, it's brilliant. The job. It's very small. It's only a few acres. But it's got a lake and lots of different habitats. You know, like they've got over 100 different species of bee found there. You know, some new to the UK and everything because the way they manage their habitats. And when I was painting that, there were 11 tern chicks raised on a tern platform on the lake. And that was amazing because they'd fledged and they were flying around, you know, making a lot of noise while I was painting, which was really nice. But there's been a big battle to try and stop the build. I mean, around there is all you know, new building, you know, big skyscrapers, and there was a big battle to try and stop this 20-story tower being built. But they lost that, and it's going to cast a shadow on the lake, and terns only nest in direct sunlight, so it's a real disaster, and that's the last kind of remnant of that kind of shorefront habitat. So it's a shame.
What, sort of in London, or is that,
no, on that stretch of Greenwich. I mean,
right.
the other big problem there was the clippers, you know, that Boris Johnson brought in, which their twin turbines churn up the mud, and apparently they've lost about 4.5 feet of mud since they were introduced, which contains all the food for the ducks, and you know, like the people who are running it said there used to be thousands of teal on the shorefront there, you know, a few years ago. Now there's just, you know, a handful because there's no food. So it's again, it's a combination of factors, which, yeah, those clippers are there basically to transport people, you know, mostly tourists up and down the river, and they're banned in Germany for the environmental damage they cause. But Boris Johnson, you know, went ahead against the environmental advice and introduced them. And it's like another kind of thoughtless
act that
pointless,
could have a massive
kind of pointless,
impact.
yeah, that has a massive impact
Yeah.
on the ecology.
Yeah.
So, and then this tower, you know, is going ahead. So, yeah.
So, so we'll keep an eye on that. It's not been built, that tower then yet, has it not? Or
No, it's going to be built.
it's going to be built now.
Yeah, they were trying to stop it. Yeah.
So the next one of our list is the Kestrel and the wildfire, and this is a bit more positive in terms of a painting, isn't it?
Well, yes and no. I mean, it's still about something that's disappearing so fast.
Yeah.
You know, kestrels used to be so common, and now they're disappearing, and like wildflower meadows are too. So yeah, I mean, it is all quite dark. You know, it is all quite. These habitats are just going, and. But the painting's positive.
Yeah, is that why you wanted to paint that then? Because was that then because it was in, where is it, Hope Gardens? Is that
yeah, that's in Acton again.
Acton
It's on emergency housing, which
Right.
is made out of shipping containers.
That's
so
right.
It's stacked 4 high. And
And was it meant to be like just a sort of image of perfection, if you like, or what should be?
It was an ideal. Yeah, it's an ideal image of a meadow, a wildflower meadow, and a kestrel. Yeah. I mean, kestrel's very special to me. I used to fly them when I was a kid. You know,
Right.
train them and all that. Yeah, and yeah, it's a nice symbol of a healthy environment. And we're in the meadow, because I painted that with Karen Francesco, and we put a load of all the things that would live in there. You know, all the insects, and because there's a huge decline in insects as well. So it's all connected.
So in terms of, you know, wildflower meadows and things like that, is that something that we're seeing more of, or is that are those declining as well?
Yeah, we've lost 97% since, you know, in the last 70 years, and you know, there are a few little initiatives to bring them back, but as a whole, they're not there. You know, in modern farming, they're just not there. You don't see wildflowers on a lot of modern farmland. So.
And they're important because of what the insects that they harbour, and then sort of the wildlife can
everything,
sort of feed off them.
Yeah, everything.
The next one we've got is the Sparrow Hawk, and this is at Daubeny Road.
Yeah.
So tell me about the Sparrow Hawk and why you painted this.
Well, that was for Friends of the Earth, and they're doing something called 10 times greener, which is a really good plan to engage everybody on a particular street. They want to kind of create a template which can be reproduced in all sorts of other areas. So they want to engage. So they got a lot of the community out and the local primary school doing all sorts of re-greening and making planters, nest boxes, little baskets to hang it, from the tower blocks, like all sorts of things, and they're still doing stuff. And part of that campaign was to they did a crowdfunder to employ a community gardener to maintain it, because a lot of things, the drawback is this kind of stuff needs to be maintained and looked after, and often people it doesn't happen, for lots of reasons. But so anyway, the crowdfunder was successful. They got a community gardener, so it's an ongoing process. And yeah, we chose a Sparrow Hawk because it's like at the top of the food chain. So if there's sparrowhawks around, it means there's lots of small birds around, and that means there's lots of insects around and lots of good habitat for them. So it's a kind of a symbol of a healthy environment.
Oh, so it's actually really good to see them.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, some people think, there's no small birds because of the sparrowhawks. It's not the case at all. That the small birds are disappearing for lack of food, lack of nesting places, and if there's sparrowhawks around, it's a good sign. So as with kestrels, it's a good sign. It shows it's healthy because they can support that. And the plan is to paint a sparrow at the other end of the street.
Oh, that'd be nice.
Yeah. So you've got both sides of
So almost at the end of our list, and at number 9, and this is a red mason bee that you painted in Hamwell Zoo.
Yeah. That was brilliant because I was doing with a few of us were doing this summer arts course with Ealing Council, and it was like the youth intervention. It was to try and it was a way of engaging before they went back through the court system or back.
Hi everyone, just a reminder that the gates will shut at 4 o'clock.
Thank you, mate.
Thanks.
So the gates shut at 4 o'clock in Walthamstow Wetlands. So that's a thing.
Yeah, really. Yeah.
So Hanwell Zoo.
We might have to spend the night here.
We probably will. It's not a bad place to spend the night, to be honest, is it? Lovely place. Tent out here? No, don't.
Yeah, one of the things we were doing a whole range of art activities, and what I was doing was woodworking, and we were making an insect house, and using So I mean, when I work doing workshops, I mean a lot of children, young people, they don't use hand tools, so they've not really used saws or hammers unless their dads have done. It's not something that's taught in schools anymore, really.
No,
it doesn't seem to be.
no.
Yeah. So sawing wood, hammering nails, using hand drills, things like that, and then collecting all the materials. So we made there's a little bit of Hamwell Zoo which is devoted to kind of native wildlife. So we made it quite a big insect house there, for solitary, a wide range of insects, solitary bees and things like that. And then I painted an actual red mason bee, which lays its eggs, and they lay an egg and with food in little tunnels, and then they seal it with mud. They make a kind of cement.
As in the masonry.
Yeah, that's why it's called a mason bee. So I did a painting of a red mason bee carrying a ball of mud, which because again, people don't seem to when people think about bees, they think about honeybees, but in fact solitary bees are much more important as pollinators than honeybees, and there's 250 species of bee in the UK.
Amazing.
And some of them nest in little holes in the ground, or in water, sandy banks, and there's multiple ways that you can help like solitary bees and other insects by just creating those little habitats. And I wanted to paint an unusual bee that people they're not that uncommon, but people don't really know about them.
Yeah. So we're on the last one of our list, and a little bit further afield. We're going to Stavanger in Norway, and this is the white-tailed eagle.
Yeah.
This looks spectacular as well on these pictures as well. This looks amazing. What a brilliant place to paint.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that was fantastic as well. And yeah, a friend of mine, invited me over there. He's really into street art. He organised the Utsia Art Street Art Festival that I did on, and I just thought the white-tailed eagle was a perfect subject, because white-tailed eagles used to live in Britain, and they lived all the way around the British coast. They're in the Thames estuary and everything. You know, they hunt fish and seabirds, and but they were hunted to extinct, because they scavenge lambs, and there's a big debate about whether they actually kill lambs or just eat the ones that have died naturally. But anyway, they were blamed for the loss of lambs, and they were just shot until the last one was shot in 1918 on the island of Shetland, and then they were reintroduced from the 1970s on some Scottish islands on the west coast of Scotland, and with birds from Norway. So it's a positive story. So it was nice to paint. It shows what can be achieved with cooperation, between different countries and different, like with Walthamstow Wetlands. Lots of different groups coming together to create something fantastic.
So they're doing okay now, the white-tailed? Are they still
Well,
okay?
I mean, they are spreading, but they are still getting shot.
Right.
And so because people do shoot things,
Right.
especially predatory birds and animals. So it's an ongoing problem about. So they probably, if they weren't getting shot, they'd probably spread a lot more. But they are well established.
Yeah, I mean that's good, isn't it? In
Yeah,
itself,
yeah.
you know,
They are there.
reintroducing
Yeah, I've seen them. They're fantastic. They're incredible things. They're huge. Yeah, they're really impressive to see.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Well, Mark, thanks for giving me your top 10, or your 10 most impactful that you're thinking about anyway. And if you want to read anything more about Mark's top 10 or any other really cool stuff about street art, then the website is inspiringcity.com. So thanks very much, Mark.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.